Welcome to Rural Reboot. I'm your host, Sage Goodwin, and I'm joined by Rob Brown. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for the invitation.
Excellent. So who is Rob Brown?
I grew up in Fremont County, so I have kind of roots here. My father was a serial entrepreneur, as am I, and he moved our family here when we were very young, just in the fourth grade. So I kind of did my formative years in Fremont County. I'm kind of a tech pioneer, left the area very early, right after I graduated from high school, and went out to start my career. Spent about 25 years fighting the good fight in the metro areas and so forth, and then kind of relocated back to Fremont County in 2007.
Okay.
And at that particular moment in time is kind of when the concept of rural reboot started to make logical sense to me and others in my circle of influence.
Yeah, so you're right on the cusp of things, getting stuff moved in that right direction.
Absolutely. In 2007, nationally, internationally for that matter, there was a huge, recession, and housing market just plummeted, and a lot of things changed real dramatically. And the way the economy works, in my opinion, is it's like a wave, and it's a wave that starts from the West Coast, goes to the East Coast, and then back to the West Coast. And so when the economy fails, those of us that are right in the center of the country, we may not feel it as early as others, but it takes a lot longer to recover. And then when you take that and you combine it with the rural component of that, it's even worse. And so from about 2007, right when we moved back to the area, until maybe even 2012, 2013, it was pretty desperate here in the area, economically speaking, and that was just because the advantages of that growth platform and critical mass that you have in the major metropolitan areas like the Front Range in Colorado just doesn't exist in rural counties all across the state, but especially here in Fremont County.
So coming to this area in 2007, what did that look like for you as a person who worked in tech? A tech pioneer, as you put it. Yeah, and
I'll tell you why I call it tech pioneer, and I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek. My license plate back in those days used to say Mr. Tech on them, and tech was different because, what the tech where I started was in the computer-aided design field, and people were still drawing stuff, with pen and ink or pencil on vellum or Mylar. That was how work got done back in the early 80s, and then in the mid-80s, they started this new concept of microcomputer CAD, and I was one of the people that started very early on in that wave, and so because of that, I literally was one of the first people to bring technology to a lot of architects and engineers, household names that you would recognize now that, designed the DIA airport and all that kind of stuff. So those times there where tech was just kind of emerging are not different at all from Fremont County, 30 years later. And what the difference is that momentum was created because of that critical mass in a large metro area. Here, it was kind of a tech wasteland, right? There just wasn't a lot of organized activity. There clearly was no momentum in that field, and what we thought of in terms of a term to describe it was we just weren't relevant in terms of tech. But I was in the tech industry, and I was probably kind of one of the first remote workers, that was looking at my ability to work virtually, nationally or internationally, and I could do it from where I wanted to build a lifestyle for myself, and that was Fremont County. But when I got here, and I started to put my roots back, into the soil here and think back, when I was in high school and before that, this wasn't the same community at all. It had definitely taken a slip backwards, and you had this inversion, if you will, with like Walmart and things that happened on the east end of town that kind of reformatted what Main Street was about. And because Main Street got reformatted, then it kind of reformatted what the neighborhoods around Main Street looked like. And so I was surprised at the abject poverty and the people that were out of work, highest employment rate in the state at that time, and it just wasn't a pretty picture. It wasn't that idyllic community that I had recalled, from years before. And so that was kind of the call to action for not just for me, but for people, like I said, in my circle of influence. We said collectively, there's got to be some things that we can do here to try to solve the problem. And we made huge assumptions, and we were wrong on the majority of them. But the one thing that we thought at that time is that technology, the tech industry specifically, was a potential vehicle to help create or catalyze this economic redevelopment. And so in 07, 08, 09, not much of anything positive happened, but into 10, 11, and 12, we started to see this shift, and then from 12 on, you really see the platform that we're working on now, which is is a tech-based or a profit cluster-based, economic reemergence, if you will.
You touched on a lot of points that I actually wanted to go deeper on. So
sure.
I want to talk a little bit about the origins of FEDC and kind of how it got rebooted in itself to focus on this reemergence, as you put it.
An interesting point about FEDC is that I was introduced to FEDC probably in the 2012, probably 2011 range,
okay.
And it at that time it had already been around for almost 40 years. And traditional economic development organizations are usually a group of people that have come together for the purpose of pushing forward a specific initiative, and usually that is about primary job creation. So if you think about primary jobs as jobs that create revenue and income from outside the community and flow it into the community, those were the jobs that were most important to FEDC.
Okay.
And at the time, they were really pushing the concept of a business incubator, which is manufacturing driven. So what if we had a place where we could bring a new emerging manufacturer and give them structure and organization and space and give them a chance to build their business? That's what it was all about.
Yeah.
And we're talking about the time frame in the 70s and 80s where you had a central receptionist and you couldn't afford to have your own, so you had one that you shared. You had shared phone systems.
Yeah.
You had a shared copy machine. I mean, that's why you were there in the incubator. That model has since changed dramatically, but that was what FEDC was about. And they did that for, decades, and, just kind of stimulated it now and again, changed direction, added new, leadership, and made a slight change. But from a mission point of view, they never really changed. And when I got involved or got first exposed to them, they were really just trying to hold serve, right? They weren't trying to do anything special. They weren't trying to do anything bad. They were just trying to keep things consistent, and try to figure out a way to make things work. And I was pretty critical of them at the time. I said, gosh, we can do better than this. This doesn't have value to me.
Yeah.
And I had another organization going that we had formed at the time called Create Canyon City. And at the same time where I was introduced to FEDC, Create Canyon City was doing real work. I mean, we were renovating the Carnegie Library, the 100-year-old library, and we spent more than $1 million in equipment, materials, and in-kind labor and everything else to renovate the exterior of that library. That was work that people could see.
Yeah.
And then the park across the street, across Macon Plaza by the Art Center, that was another project that we worked on with a local Boy Scout. And so there were things that we were doing. I couldn't see the things at the time that FEDC was doing. Didn't appreciate the history that they'd established.
Yeah.
But after having further conversations with it, I met one of the principals, one of the leadership there, and he basically agreed. He said, we just don't have that catalyst. We just don't have that momentum. And so we made a pact with the devil, so to speak, that said, we're going to put our thoughts together and see if we could push this forward.
Okay.
And literally, it was the first time in a business operation that I came in with the instructions that were either we're going to make this work or we're going to shut it down. And it was either or. And so it was like pedal to the metal. We're going to spend the money that we have. We're going to try to create some momentum, or we're just going to, just sunset this thing. Fortunately, we have this incredible resource in Fremont County called people.
Yes.
And because we had this platform now, with both the efforts to create Canyon City up to that point and then the long history of FEDC, we had these really key people that we were able to mobilize. All they needed at the time was some new direction and some new momentum, that could be added. And fortunately, I got to play a part in that, and I'm very proud of that fact. But more importantly, I'm very proud of the relationships that I've been able to build that really started at that moment in time, right around 2012, 2013 range.
Yeah, which funnily enough is the same time that we moved to this area.
Oh, really?
My family and I.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like we actually. It's hilarious, the correlations, because my family went on a trip across the West Coast. We stayed a little bit we actually stayed at the KOA campground over by the Gorge.
Okay.
We went to the
Jason
Gorge.
Messer's place.
Yep, that was 2008.
Okay.
And then we came back and we moved here in 2013.
Very nice.
So around kind of like these key moments.
Yes.
Which is funny, but didn't really see kind of the inner workings like you put it.
Right.
So kind of setting the stage a little bit, you come back to this area. You've had you had this previous experience with the area of it being like really progressive and pushing forward these new ideas and these new technologies that got you started down your path.
Right.
You come back. You see that through the recession, it's kind of they went back. They went a little more reserved. What are the steps that you took to become more involved and kind of move forward with Create Canyon City, getting involved with FEDC? What are the steps that took you from 2007 to the points in 2012, 2013?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I've asked myself that question many times. What was the actual catalyst? What was that starting point? Why did things catch hold, when they hadn't previously? And what I've come up with is this term I call activation. And activating is this technique where you put your hand on someone's shoulder that or that you've got a relationship with, and you ask them to bring their asset, their human asset, their labor inventory, if you will, into the discussion. And that's exactly how I got involved. And what I started with is I actually ran for city council, and I didn't know many people. I didn't know how it worked. But I experimented with the concept. I thought the best way for me to help the community would be for me to be on city council. So I threw my hat in the ring, and then I was approached by various different special interest groups and asked questions. And I really maintained a very hard line at the time, and I said, I'm not making any decisions before I'm in office because I want to learn about the people and the problems and the challenges that they're having before I make these determinations. Yeah. And that was like my execution. I did not get elected, although I was I would have been next in line had there been one more spot open at the time. So I did a reasonably good job. But one of the local citizens, his name is Bob Leck Builders, builds beautiful homes all over this area, happened to be my neighbor, and I was out doing some yard work, and he stopped and he said, Rob, I really thought you did a good job in your campaign, and I liked a lot of the stuff you said during the debates and so forth. Okay. He said, so what are you going to do now that you didn't get elected? And he kind of challenged my manhood, if you will, kind of said, what are you going to do? You had a lot of good ideas, so you're just going to disappear, or are you going to do something? And that was that activation catalyst, and it was Bob to me, and he got me involved. We ultimately formed Create Canyon City and did the library. The next step was a similar activation where David Reynolds, who's been our longtime treasurer for FEDC, and he's a recently retired commercial contractor, he did the same thing with FEDC. He said, Rob, what's it going to take to get you involved with us? He said, we could really use some new blood, some new creativity and so forth. And he activated me, and I got involved in FEDC at the time. And I just used that exact same technique, and I just started looking around to people that I knew, people that I had met, concepts that I had heard about, and I reached out and I activated these people and brought them into the discussion.
Okay.
And that's really the tipping point, is that when FEDC changed from the type of organization that did things the same way, with similar results, not bad, not good, nothing wrong with it, but they just weren't achieving any quantum leaps. And then we started activating people on our team, and we started building the team, and they heard a new vision, and we were emerging from a particularly poor economy. And economic development organizations are frequently looked to more in economic bad times than they are in economic good times. And so we were able to find this wealth of people in our community, bring them into the solution, get them off the proverbial sofa, and none of them were literally on a sofa, but get them off the sofa and into the game. And that's exactly what we did. And many of these names, and frankly, Sage, I consider you to be one of those people, because you were activated by Brad Rowland, possibly, and I was responsible for activating Brad, and and so
it becomes this web.
It does become this web, and we've continued to do that in various different circles of influence. I call them profit clusters, but they're a mechanism to reach out and get people involved, and that's really the key, is that we have retired doctors, lawyers, engineers, bankers, architects, you name it, in our community that have tremendous careers, and they have something to give back. They're willing to give back. And then at the opposite end of that, we have great young people that are just emerging and beginning to join the labor force, or going to school, or doing whatever. We have that commodity as well. And so when we bring those various different aspects, and everything in between, just to be clear, when we bring those into the fray, that's when we start to have real clear thought and momentum. And there is no such thing as unique thought in mankind, right? And the reason that you landed in Fremont County in 2008 to 2012, and why my wife and I did that and made these decisions, is because there is no unique thought. There is this, continuum of thought by mankind, and one of the places that we all find attractive is rural, but once we get here, it's just like buying a dilapidated old house. You got to put a new coat of paint on it.
Exactly.
And so I think that's just human nature.
The blinds need to be redone. You need to
right.
redo the floor, because now that you did the blinds and you did the paint,
That's exactly right. And so, that's where the catalyst starts. I've had this description, and I'll share it with you, and if others have heard it before, I apologize. But, when you're out in rural Colorado and you're driving your car, and your car breaks down and you pull over to the side of the road, you lift your hood, and then you wait, and you hope, because maybe you don't have cell service there, or maybe cars are, only one every 4 or 5 hours. So you really have one of two choices: is you sit around and wait and hope, or you actually try to fix it yourself. And I think the rural mentality, all the way from the farmer and the people that are out there making their living by creating stuff from scratch, they have this mentality of fixing things and improving things. And I think that's what we've had to do here in Fremont County, is that there was no magic answer for this. What we had instead was an epic problem, and we could sit around and wait for somebody else to solve it, and they may have never done that, or we could rally ourselves and create this momentum. And I think that's what we've done and what we continue to do, because clearly we have progress, but we do not have a solution yet. We're just partway through this whole process.
So talking a little bit about activation, what is it kind of like? Are you strategically looking for people to activate, or is there more of like you hear, or you're looking for a specific area of expertise, or is it more people show up and you're kind of activating them?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all those things. But in my mind, because I come from a technical background, engineering background, I like to control as much of my destiny as I can. So from a planning point of view, I'm looking for specific personality types. I'm looking for specific skill sets. I'm looking for specific capabilities, and then I'm going out networking in the community, and that's how I find these people. And then it's up to me to shake their hand and say, have you ever considered being part of our solution? And all of them that we've mentioned previously, we have some great volunteers. We mentioned Brad Rowland earlier, but we have dozens of people like him. Maybe not to the same extreme state that he's taken this volunteerism, but we have many, many people that have that capability. But I didn't meet him directly. I started socializing the concept and the type of skills that I needed and the type of a person that I needed, and then I was introduced to him by a third party, right? And we've done that countless times, with others that we've brought.
I think it's one of the strengths
to the
of
team.
rural, honestly.
Absolutely, it is, and a nice young lady, and this is not gender specific, but she referred to the Good Old Boy Network, and she had just moved to our area, and she said, I can't get anything going with my building project because of the Good Old Boy Network. And I kind of took that to heart, and it isn't about old boys or old girls for that matter. What it's about are people that have been in a community for a long time, so they're ingrained in a particular way of doing things and a way of thinking. And so it's incumbent upon all of us to break that barrier, regardless of their ethnicity or their religion or their gender. It's incumbent upon all of us to look beyond that. And I think that's exactly what we've tried to do at FEDC is let's identify and then ultimately activate people regardless of any of these other things, but do they bring a particular skill set to our effort? And if they do, that's great. If they don't, maybe they will later, or maybe they'll introduce us to somebody else that will. And so it's about activating people. It's going to always be about that in rural.
Yeah, talking a little bit more of nurtured growth versus there's beauty in both. There's beauty in a cultivated field and there's beauty in a wild forest. And it's which one of those do you want for this area?
Yeah, that's a question that we constantly trouble ourselves with, and Colorado has had this problem for eons that I can remember. Because I'm a fourth-generation Colorado native, so I was born in the same hospital as my great-great-grandmother, literally.
Oh, wow.
So I have very, very deep roots here, and I've had the privilege of having many, many conversations with people that go back decades and decades, and they'll tell you things like that, I remember when, Colfax Avenue, which separates Denver, east to west, was a dirt road, and you'll hear all this stuff, but it actually was at a point in time. But where I'm going with that concept is that there is no real jumping off spot until there is one, and then and so at some point or another you have to get into the game. Otherwise, there is no game. And of these eons, people are always of the opinion when they come to Colorado, they say, man, I just love it here. Now shut the door behind me, right?
Yeah.
Or there's the other side of the group that says, welcome to Colorado, meaning the tourism folks, now go home.
Yeah.
So we've always had that. And I think in Canyon City, Florence, and Fremont County, we have to some extent, we have this aversion to bringing more people because we don't want to see the traffic problems. We don't want to see the crime and other associated things. So you do have to manage it. And one of the ways that you can manage it is to take growth by creating opportunities here for people that already live here and create a separate but unique set of opportunities for people that are outside the area that want to move here. So it can be controlled, it can be managed, but most importantly, there is only one way to assure your success, and that is through an additive economy, some kind of growth. You can't go backwards, and you can't even stay the same, or you simply cease to exist. And so we have to have growth. That's just a fact of nature. And so if we're going to grow, let's grow it in a fashion that is most amenable to the broadest group, of people. And my ancestors that came here, that migrated here through, from Ireland through Ohio to Colorado in the 1860s, they had the same challenges and views about it that I have today. And it's that, now that I'm here, I have to make the best possible situation. And if you do that, by default, you're going to attract people to follow your path.
Exactly. And you're making the pathway for others. And
Absolutely.
It's trying to make it a joyful experience for everyone involved and nurture that community versus I'm going to forge this path, and then as I'm forging it, I'm just throwing rocks in the path behind me. That's not good for the community as a whole. And I love that you mentioned this, the additive economy, as well as pairing it with the core of the community that is here, because I think that there is a space in a lot of different communities where you either focus on one or the other.
Right.
And you need a thriving economy. To have a thriving economy, you have to have money coming from other places into your area.
That's absolutely correct. And one of the biggest problems that rural economies have always had is maintaining the people that they're creating. Getting the young people to either stay here or come back here after they clear their education or they clear, some of their experience. And I call it the wayward sons and now daughters mentality. But when I look into my personal circle of influence, I have many, many people that I've known my entire life that have left Fremont County and come back. But when they came back, now they're bringing additional experience, additional, financial success and so forth with them back to the community and making it a better place. So if we could focus on bringing people back and at the same time focus on growing our own, meaning people and young people that are here, let's create opportunities for them so they do feel compelled to become involved in our market. One of the scariest things in the world is our education system. We've got a great school system. Florence High School, Canyon City High School, RE1 and 2, they're doing a great job. One of their biggest challenges is attracting and retaining teachers and talent. Well, one of the reasons for that is because our community, from an outsider's perspective, may not look like a perfect fit for somebody that is in their 20s, maybe single or a young family. There are other places that are more attractive for people of that particular demographic. So it's a travesty that we attract somebody and then aren't able to retain them, or we have a job that's open because we can't attract them in the first place. Those are the keys to establishing a connection with our youth and keeping them involved in our community locally. And so those are areas that we have to not just fix once. These are constant struggles that we have to continuously maintain. I'm certainly up for the task, and I know our community is. And when you talk to our teachers that are here now and the administration, they're doing a great job of that. But we can only do better, right? That's our only choice. We have to continue to do better in that area.
Exactly. Shifting gears just a little bit, I want to talk about the profit or economic clusters that you set up with the START system. What was the approach when you got into FEDC? You guys are looking at it from a different perspective. You're saying we have to make this work, or it's not going to work. What was the viewpoints around going into this direction?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I'll try to do my best to explain it. And I've failed miserably many times because it is kind of it's a process that's so simple that it's complex to understand. And you and I were on a call recently, and I said I'm the guy to blame for the profit clusters, and I say that kind of jokingly, but the reality of it was when I became involved with FEDC, I started to look at individual business vertical markets, individual businesses, a company, individuals, a person, and I said, if I could just get that company to be interested in us, or if I could just get that person to be on our team, then we would be better off because of it. So then when you start looking at a focus of an individual entity, whether it is an individual or a group of individuals or a business or a vertical market, doesn't matter. But when you begin to focus on that, then you have to create tools or mechanisms to make that happen, right? It's not a one-to-one kind of a basis. And so I started to think, let's say that we wanted to be in the tech industry. We wanted to be tech relevant in Fremont County. That's our vertical. Okay, so how would we do that? Well, we're going to have to build some support systems around it. It's got to be more than one person. Yeah. So then you start thinking in terms of multiple people, and then you start thinking in terms of organizational support. Then you start thinking in terms of financial support. And so to me, that represented a cluster of people, resources that were aligned for a common goal, which was to bring this business to our area. So I'm a graphic guy, so I got on my whiteboard and I started, drawing an example, a flow chart of what this might look like. And with the objective of business acquisition, business-based development, that means that you have to make a profit. I mean, that's the number one key in any business. Either you're making a profit or you're going out of business. There's nothing in between. And so from that perspective, I said, that's where the profit side comes from, the cluster side comes from, and those know me. I have an interesting sense of humor, and there are other things that are referenced as a cluster, which isn't a good thing. And so I thought it would be kind of ironic if we married the two terms together, and that's where profit cluster was formed. So to the listener, what a profit cluster is it's a group of like-minded people that are pursuing a common objective. You don't need to know anything more than that. And so what was the objective that we wanted to pursue first? That was, what would it take to be tech relevant and create or start new businesses? And that's where the Tech Start concept came from, and we're continuing to roll out new start initiatives like Well Start, like Ag Start, like Trade Start, and we just decided that we wanted to keep a consistency throughout our marketing effort, because that's in itself is a cluster, right? A profit cluster. So that's where the genesis of the cluster concept came from. So once you have identified a target, which was tech in this instance, then we had to start building this ecosystem around the concept of being tech relevant, and that's when Brad Rowland was added to the team, and many others. I won't try to name them all, but any of them that are listening, thank you for your efforts. But those were the decisions that we had to start making to create this concept of relevancy. And in each case, with our cluster concept, it requires a champion. Somebody's got to be the guy driving the bus. And the example the analogy, the visual that I would give the listener is, you've got a school bus, and you've got a bunch of kids on the bus, and the bus is going up a hill, and the engine in the bus stops, right? So because when the power isn't there, then the bus stops going up the hill and it actually starts going in reverse. So the only option that you have if you're on the bus is you have to get out of the bus and start pushing the bus up the hill. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's going to run over all of you and kill them, right?
Yeah.
But more importantly, somebody's got to be steering the bus. Mm-hmm. So all of that support, no matter how much support you have on your bus, and your bus is your profit cluster, no matter how much support you have, you're dead weight if you don't have somebody steering the bus, if you don't have power behind the bus. So the critical component to success is both a champion of the profit cluster and as many participants as possible, because we all know initially the bus isn't going to have any power. So those people that would normally be riding the bus, they got to be pushing the bus. And that's how we've managed to get these off the ground. And there are varying levels of time and effort involved in them at this point, and there are varying levels of success. But the bottom line is that the process is proven. We've determined it works. So we just had to continue to add new and better people to the bus and add more power and continue to drive this thing down the road. So sorry for the tortured analogy, but that's how I view it. Is that bus mentality.
It's a good descriptor of it.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges and victories that you found with this profit cluster idea, specifically suited towards rural?
that the big win there, I think, was when we discovered, kind of getting our first profit cluster off the ground. We discovered this very deep pool of talent that was in our area. I don't think anybody realized exactly how many people were enjoying a lifestyle in rural Colorado that had other talents to bring. So that was clearly one of our biggest victories, I think, is just that discovery. So now I am completely unafraid of any industry, because I know that if we do a good job of marketing the concept, we will find people to activate that can help us push the initiative forward. It's a virtually limitless group of people. But I'll also say that it is regionally specific. So that means that we may have the ability to push tech forward in Fremont County, but our neighboring county, Custer or Chaffee, they may have a different start concept that might work better, in their markets, depending on who they have concentrated in their areas. Maybe it is more ag specific, or maybe it's more wellness specific, or maybe it's the cluster concept that we haven't developed yet that is more specific. So when I talk about activating people and getting them involved, and the victory that's associated with getting them involved, big part of it is identifying them, right? And I'm looking into my crystal ball, and I'm working with others both in our community here and at the state level that might be able to help us with technology that would actually help identify these potential candidates. But that's clearly our biggest win, is making this kind of a discovery. And it's a beginning point, but it is clearly, giving us the momentum in that area, and giving us some relevance at the state level and the national level, for that matter, and some of the concepts. But at the end of the day, it's all about results, and we have to continuously manage and monitor that to continue to be relevant, in those spaces.
How did you identify each of these clusters to start with?
I think it was probably more subjective and just intuitive on my part that I thought these would be good starting points, just based on my personal life's experience.
Pun intended.
Yes, exactly. And it was nothing more than that. So that, I'm clearly to blame if it was a bad idea. Got lucky in this particular instance that it worked out of the chute, because frankly it wasn't well supported at first. When I introduced the concept, I introduced it at an annual banquet, and it was like crickets out there. I just missed the mark entirely in terms of explaining it conceptually, and almost gave up on it, frankly, because I just think I said I must have missed the mark. But once I reevaluated, I said, no, I think I'm right on this one, and I am a persistent kind of a personality type, and so I continue to to kind of power through it, and I'm glad I did. But I think other communities could have easily the same or probably even better success than Fremont County has had, but they have to find those key people. And I'll say it 1,000 times, I've been so fortunate to be able to build a team here in Fremont County that is unparalleled, really, and that's a difference, to the point where when I've introduced this concept at the state level, I've had people say, yeah, that works for you in Fremont County because you have the right team. We don't think it translates everywhere else. And I say to them, I don't think they're correct. I think they're undervaluing, these other groups of people. It may be a different kind of a start, but it still exists there.
I think it's too a part of rural mindset is we're gonna strap everything together with baling wire and duct tape.
You got it.
But there's also this flip side of it too, where you're looking at it, you are immersed in your community and you're looking at other communities. You're like, man, they've got it put together.
Yeah.
Even though every single community is also doing it with every other community. They're saying, man, that other community's got it put together. Same communities looking at each other and saying, They've got what's going on.
Here's an example that I'll share with you on that exact point. When I drove, I live in Canyon City. We're in Florence at the Emergent campus doing this this podcast. So you drive Highway 115, which is the old highway, and it's curvy and slow for those of you who've never driven on it. But there's a big sign for the Royal Gorge Preservation Project saying no to the gold mine that Zephyr is proposing in Canyon City. Absolutely no.
Yes.
Natural resources aren't worth it. Big negative. And the sign is sitting in a field of hemp. Okay, so which is exactly the same thing in terms of exploiting a natural resource in the area. So you have this dichotomy of things that years ago, mining would have been absolutely accepted, hemp production would have been absolutely rejected, and now you have this flip-flop, right? So I think where I'm going with my point on this particular thing is that rural is dependent on the momentum created by the people that are here at the time that they're here. And so each community is going to have a different look and feel, but it is going to be driven by the people that are there. It's not going to be driven at the state level or at the national level. It's going to be driven right in your own backyard.
Yeah, like you have to, we're all here. We love this area. And we'll get into this, we'll end this off on this one question, but I want to hammer down this point. We all live here for a specific reason, but other people may not have seen this reason. If we want to attract those people, we have to make it as enjoyable of an experience as we want. And people are like, there could be people that come here and revitalize it, and they bring in a bunch of money and everything happens super smoothly.
Right.
More than likely, that's not going to happen, and it's going to be the will of the community pushing forward the things that the community wants. And ultimately, if you make it a place where people want to stay, other people are going to want to come here.
That's right. That's right. No, there's no question about that. I see it all the time because I did have the privilege of serving on the State Economic Development Commission as one of the 11 commissioners for 2 terms. My term ended at the end of 2020. And at that point, I'm looking at the state. So I'm not just looking at Fremont County. I'm looking at every county. I'm not just looking at rural. I'm looking at, the metro areas. And everybody has their own set of problems. But the reality is that in order for any given area to prosper, it still remains most likely to prosper if they have a consolidated viewpoint and are looking forward with a common vision. It doesn't matter if you're talking about where the new freeway is going to go through the middle of the 6 counties surrounding Denver County, or if you're looking at, the new fast food restaurant that's about to open on Highway 50 in Canyon City.
Yeah.
Those are exactly the same level of interest relative to the communities that they're in. So the way we push the economy forward in Fremont County specifically is to continue to drive forward with the resources that we have, with the people that we have, and with the collective consciousness that we have. And if we can align those things, we can clearly push this forward. And there's champions like me that are out there banging this drum all the time, but I'm going to come and go just like the last guy came and went. And, I may step out in front of a bus tomorrow. So the vision has to be bigger than that, and it has to be a collective vision. I've seen this exercise multiple times since I've been here about rebranding this area. That is a great exercise to go through so you can realize exactly how many great things there are here. But if you're a mountain biking enthusiast and somebody else is a theater, live theater enthusiast, and you flip-flop places, the live theater enthusiast is going to be pretty disappointed in Fremont County because there's only a few plays a year versus being in a metro area where they can see something new every night of the week. Conversely, the mountain bike is virtually worthless if you're living in a high-rise downtown apartment building, in Denver. So we really have to continue to focus on our own assets and attract the people that find those most valuable to them. Then they can live here because they want to live here, and then work here because they want to live here. That's the perfect blend, in my view.
Exactly. And finishing this episode off, why Fremont County?
Well, Fremont County this is an interesting question, and certainly I get asked this question all the time. And I think the most common answer that others provide is it's the banana belt, or the best weather in Colorado. And I counter that by saying, yeah, it's great weather for if you live in Colorado, but if you live in San Diego, it's still better in San Diego if you don't like to deal with snow. So I think the key to Fremont County,
or if you like snow,
yeah, right, or conversely, if you like snow. So I think the key to Fremont County's appeal is that we have 60 miles of the Arkansas River and some of the most wonderful outdoor adventure opportunities in the entire country. But beyond our great weather and beyond our opportunities and our great schools and our governments that are doing a great job, I think it really does boil down to the people that live here because they want to be here, and they want to be here because of the lifestyle that affords them. So if you want to choose a county, then you choose a county based on the happiness quotient of those that live here. And I think we probably peg the chart on those types of issues. And so that's really the secret ingredient and the maybe the well-kept secret of why Fremont County is such a great place, is because of the great concentration of people that we've had in this community, not just now, but for its entire history, going back to when the Native Americans picked this area, to winter because of all of the other amenities that it has. So that's my 30-second Chamber of Commerce speech on it.
The people, the community.
The people.
Definitely.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time, and thank you so much for all that you do, a part of FEDC, a part of the community, and a part of the beautiful, beautiful place that we call home.
Thank you very much, Sage. There's no place I'd rather be.
Exactly.
Thank you.